Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to tell you. Most people don't actually like you. They tolerate you. They smile, they nod, they make small talk. But deep down, you're invisible. Forgettable. Just another face in their social radar that barely registers. But what if I told you there's a formula, a psychological blueprint that can flip this entire dynamic? What if you could walk into any room and have people genuinely drawn to you like a magnet? I'm about to show you the 3-tier system that separates the invisible from the unforgettable. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why everything you've been taught about being likable is not just wrong, it's actively sabotaging your social success. Let me destroy a myth right now. You think being likable means being nice. Wrong. You think it means agreeing with everyone. Dead wrong. You think it means being available, helpful, accommodating. You couldn't be more backwards if you tried. Here's what actually happens when you operate from this mindset. You become a social utility. A human vending machine. People press your buttons, you dispense whatever they need, and then they walk away without a second thought. I call this the golden retriever trap. You're friendly, eager to please, always wagging your tail for approval. And just like a golden retriever, you're loved in theory but taken for granted in practice. The brutal reality, likable people aren't the ones everyone agrees with. They're the ones everyone remembers. They're not the safest choice. They're the most compelling choice. So throw everything you think you know about likability out the window. Because we're about to rebuild your entire social operating system from the ground up. Every person you meet places you into one of 3 categories within the first 30 seconds. I call it the social value pyramid. And where you land determines everything about how they'll treat you for the rest of your relationship. Tier 1. The invisible. These are the social ghosts. Nice, harmless, forgettable. They nod along, they never disagree. They're always available. They think being agreeable equals being likable. Wrong. They're human wallpaper. Present but unnoticed. Tier 2. The interesting. These people have opinions. They have stories. They have a point of view that makes you think. They're not trying to be liked by everyone, which paradoxically makes them more likable to the people who matter. Tier 3. The magnetic. This is where the magic happens. These people don't just share opinions. They create experiences. They don't just tell stories. They make you feel like you're living them. They understand something the other tiers don't. Likability isn't about you liking them. It's about them liking themselves when they're around you. Here's the key insight. Most people are stuck in Tier 1, desperately trying to climb to Tier 2 by being more interesting. But the real players, they skip right to Tier 3 by mastering the psychology of social elevation. Want to know the fastest way to make someone like you? Make them like themselves more when they're around you. I call this the mirror effect, and it's based on a simple psychological principle. People don't remember what you said. They remember how you made them feel. But here's where it gets sophisticated. It's not about fake flattery or empty compliments. Those actually backfire because people's social radar is incredibly sensitive to manipulation. The mirror effect works on 3 levels. Level 1, attention amplification. When someone is talking, most people are waiting for their turn to speak. You're going to do the opposite. You're going to listen so intently that they feel like the most fascinating person in the room. Not because you're pretending, but because you're genuinely curious about their perspective. Level 2, value reflection. You're going to find something genuinely impressive about their choices, their insights, or their experiences. Not surface-level stuff. Dig deeper. Find the thing they're proud of but don't often get recognized for. Level 3, future pacing. This is advanced. You're going to help them see a better version of themselves. Not by giving advice. That's condescending. But by asking questions that help them articulate their own aspirations and potential. The result? They walk away feeling elevated, energized, and unconsciously associating those positive feelings with you. Here's where most people completely lose the plot. They think that being likable means being available. Always saying yes, always accommodating, always flexible with their time and boundaries. This is social suicide. Let me introduce you to the scarcity paradox. The more available you are, the less valuable you become. The more you chase approval, the more you repel the very people whose approval you're seeking. Think about it. What do you value more? Something you can get anytime or something that's rare and exclusive? The most likable people understand this instinctively. They're generous with their attention when they give it, but they don't give it to everyone. They're selective, they have standards, They have other things going on in their lives that matter to them. This isn't about playing hard to get. That's manipulation. This is about actually being someone worth getting. Someone with their own mission, their own standards, their own sense of purpose that doesn't revolve around other people's approval. When you operate from abundance rather than scarcity, something magical happens. People start competing for your attention instead of you competing for theirs. Most people try to fit in. They mirror the energy of the room. They go with the flow. They avoid standing out. This is exactly why they remain invisible. Likeable people understand the contrast principle. You can't be memorable if you're identical to everyone else. But here's the sophisticated part. It's not about being different for the sake of being different. That's just attention-seeking behavior. And people can smell it from a mile away. Strategic contrast is about bringing something unique to every interaction. Maybe it's a different perspective on a common topic. Maybe it's a story that nobody else in the room could tell. Maybe it's an energy that shifts the entire dynamic. I'm not talking about being controversial or confrontational. I'm talking about being authentically different in a way that adds value to the interaction. Think about the most memorable people you know. I guarantee they're not memorable because they agreed with everything you said. They're memorable because they challenged you, surprised you, or showed you something you hadn't considered before. This is the difference between fitting in and belonging. Fitting in is about becoming who you think others want you to be. Belonging is about being accepted for who you actually are. Here's a psychological principle that will change how you approach every social interaction. People value what they invest in. Most people think likability is about what you give to others. Wrong. It's about what you inspire others to give to you. When someone invests time, energy, or emotional labor in you, they become psychologically committed to your success. It's cognitive dissonance. They can't invest in someone they don't like, so their brain convinces them that they must like you. But you can't just ask for investment. That's needy and repelling. You have to create opportunities for people to invest in you naturally. How do you do this? Ask for advice, not favors. When you ask someone for their opinion or expertise, you're positioning them as the expert and yourself as the student. People love feeling knowledgeable and helpful, but more importantly, they're now invested in your success because they've contributed to your decision-making process. Share your struggles, not just your successes. Vulnerability creates investment. When you let someone see behind the curtain, not in a needy way, but in a way that shows trust, they become emotionally invested in your journey. Create collaborative experiences. Instead of just hanging out, create situations where you're building something together, even if it's just a really good conversation about a topic you're both passionate about. The key is reciprocity. You're not just taking their investment, you're investing back. But you're doing it strategically, in a way that creates a positive feedback loop of mutual value creation. Likeable people understand something that nice people don't respect. And likability aren't opposites, they're partners. You can't be truly likable without being respected. And you can't maintain respect without having boundaries, standards, and the willingness to disagree when necessary. This is where the authority dynamic comes in. It's not about being authoritarian or dominating conversations. It's about being authoritative, speaking with conviction, having clear principles, and not apologizing for taking up space. Most people are so afraid of being disliked that they never take a strong position on anything. They hedge their bets. They qualify their statements. They defer to whatever the group consensus seems to be. This makes them forgettable. Authoritative people, on the other hand, have opinions. They have preferences. They have standards. And they're not afraid to express them, not aggressively, but confidently. Here's the counterintuitive part. When you're willing to be disliked by some people, you become more likable to the people who matter, because authenticity is magnetic. Conviction is compelling, and people would rather interact with someone they disagree with than someone who stands for nothing. The most likable people in your life, think about them right now. I guarantee they're not the ones who always agreed with you. They're the ones who challenged you, who had their own perspective, who weren't afraid to be themselves even when it wasn't popular. Here's a psychological phenomenon that explains why some people light up every room they enter while others seem to drain the energy from every interaction. Emotional contagion. Your emotional state is contagious. People unconsciously mirror the energy you bring to an interaction. If you're anxious, they become anxious. If you're bored, they become bored. If you're genuinely excited and engaged, they become excited and engaged. This is why trying to be likable from a place of insecurity never works. Your neediness, your desperation for approval, your fear of rejection, it's all contagious. People feel it, and they unconsciously start to feel uncomfortable without knowing why. But when you show up with genuine enthusiasm, curiosity, and positive energy, not fake positivity but authentic engagement with life, people can't help but be drawn to that. The most likable people aren't necessarily the happiest people, but they're the most alive people. They bring energy to interactions instead of taking it. They're curious about others, instead of worried about themselves. They're focused on creating value instead of extracting approval. This is the difference between being liked because you're safe and being liked because you're stimulating. Safe is forgettable. Stimulating is magnetic. If you want to be truly likable, you need to become someone who makes other people feel more alive when they're around you. Facts tell, but stories sell. And in the context of likability, stories create connection in a way that normal conversation never can. Most people communicate in what I call data dumps. They share information, opinions, and updates without any narrative structure. It's boring, forgettable, and it doesn't create any emotional investment from the listener. Likable people are natural storytellers, not because they're more interesting, but because they understand how to make their experiences interesting to others. Every story you tell should have three elements. Conflict. What challenge, obstacle, or unexpected situation did you face? Stakes. Why did it matter? What was at risk, or what did you stand to gain or lose? Resolution. How did it play out? What did you learn, or how did you grow? But here's the advanced technique. The best stories aren't about you being the hero. They're about you being the student, the observer, or even the fool who learned something valuable. When you tell a story where you're the protagonist who conquered everything, people might be impressed, but they don't feel connected to you. When you tell a story where you struggled, learned, or grew, people see themselves in your experience. The goal isn't to impress people with your stories. It's to help them feel something, learn something, or see something from a new perspective. Most people think reciprocity means keeping score. You do something for me, I do something for you. This transactional mindset actually kills likability because it makes every interaction feel like a business deal. True reciprocity is about creating value loops where everyone benefits, but nobody's keeping track. Here's how sophisticated people handle this. Give first, but give strategically. Don't just be helpful to everyone, about everything. That makes you a doormat. Instead, identify the specific ways you can add value based on your unique skills, knowledge, or connections. Make it about them, not about you. When you help someone, don't do it to create obligation or to get credit. Do it because you genuinely want to see them succeed. People can sense the difference. Create compound value. The most likable people don't just solve immediate problems, they help others build capabilities. Instead of just giving someone a fish, they teach them to fish. Instead of just making an introduction, they help someone become the kind of person who attracts great connections. The result is a positive feedback loop where people actively look for ways to support you because they associate you with growth, opportunity, and positive outcomes in their own lives. Likable people understand something that most people miss entirely. Timing is everything. It's not just what you say or do, it's when you say or do it. The same action can make you likable or annoying depending entirely on the context and timing. Know when to speak and when to listen. Most people wait for their turn to talk. Likable people know when the moment calls for them to contribute and when it calls for them to create space for others. Know when to be serious and when to bring levity. The ability to read a room and match or shift the energy appropriately is a superpower. Sometimes people need you to be the voice of reason. Sometimes they need you to be the comic relief. Know when to push and when to pull back. Sometimes people need to be challenged. Sometimes they need to be supported. Sometimes they need space to figure things out themselves. Know when to be available and when to be scarce. Your attention should be generous when given, but not unlimited in supply. This isn't about manipulation. It's about emotional intelligence. It's about being socially calibrated enough to give people what they need when they need it, rather than just giving them what you want to give them when you want to give it. Here's the final and most important principle. Authentic likability comes from being genuinely yourself, but the yourself you choose to be in social situations should be the best version of yourself. Most people think authenticity means having no filter, sharing every thought, and being completely unguarded in every situation. This isn't authenticity. It's emotional immaturity. Real authenticity is about being true to your values, your principles, and your core personality, while being socially intelligent about how you express those things. You can be honest without being brutal. You can be opinionated without being argumentative. You can be confident without being arrogant. You can be vulnerable without being needy. The most likable people aren't the most perfect people. They're the most real people, but they're real in a way that adds value to others' lives rather than just serving their own need for expression. This means sometimes choosing not to share something because it doesn't serve the interaction. It means sometimes challenging yourself to be more generous, more curious, or more present than you feel like being in the moment. True authenticity isn't about doing whatever you feel like doing. It's about being the person you're capable of being at your best, consistently, even when it requires effort. So here's your challenge. Pick one of these principles and commit to practicing it for the next week. Not all of them. That's a recipe for overwhelm and failure. Just one. Maybe it's the mirror effect, really listening to people and helping them feel heard and valued. Maybe it's the contrast principle, bringing your unique perspective to conversations instead of just agreeing with everyone. Maybe it's the investment theory, creating opportunities for people to contribute to your success instead of just trying to impress them. Whatever you choose, commit to it fully. Practice it intentionally. Pay attention to how people respond differently when you operate from these principles instead of just trying to be nice. Because here's the truth. Being likable isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. And when you master these psychological principles, you won't just be more likable. You'll be more memorable, more influential, and more genuinely connected to the people who matter in your life. The choice is yours. Stay invisible or become magnetic. The principles are here. The only question is whether you're ready to apply them.